Eddie Chavez, Ruben Nava, and Jesse Romero. Jesus 911.
Jesus 911 on Virgin Most Powerful Radio. We got a two-man car today, Jesse Romero and myself, Ruben Nava. We are 10-8. We're here to give you some Catholic intel, or some Catholic briefing. And we have a good show today, packed with a lot of good information. And Jesse, good morning. Today's a feast day of Saints Philomena, Saints Perpetua, and Felicitas. And that was the parish I attended as a child. My parents still attend there in San Marino.
Wow. So today's feast day means a lot to you then.
Yeah, it does.
These were two incredible young women, Ruben. Let me just share the story. Talk about inspiration on the second day of Lent. Saint Perpetua and Felicity, okay, young Christian women. They lived around the 3rd century. They were martyrs. Mm-hmm. They were in prison before they were martyred. We know a lot of what happened from the written account of Saint Perpetua herself, from her diary that we have archived. And there's also other martyrs that were there. Their names are unknown. They also wrote about these executions. So here's what happened. Saint Perpetua was a young noblewoman of Carthage. This was a city in North Africa. She was the daughter of a Christian mother and a pagan father. It's believed that she was a widow because she also had an infant son. Felicity was the married slave girl. She was far advanced in pregnancy, and the 2 women and 3 fellow catechumens had been converted to the Catholic faith by a layman named Satyrus, and they were baptized while under house arrest for refusing to worship the pagan gods of Rome, and so they were transferred to this common jail. Satyrus, this Catholic layman, voluntarily joined them in jail. Well, Felicity gave birth to a girl while she was in jail, while enduring the taunting of an unfriendly jailer. And this child was adopted and raised by a fellow Christian. Perpetua, she was worried about her own son, who for a time she kept with her in jail until her parents took the child home. And St. Perpetua wrote a description of her father's visit. She said this, quote, "When my father, in his affection for me, was trying to turn me from my purpose by arguments and thus weaken my faith, I said to him, 'Do you see this vessel, water pot, or whatever it may be? Can it be called by any other name than what it is?' 'No,' he replied. 'So also, Dad,' that's what he probably would have said, 'Father, so also I cannot call myself by any other name than what I am. I am a Christian.'" That's what Saint Perpetua told her father, because he's saying, "Hey, just worship this false god and get out of here and come home with your baby." She says, "Nope, not having it." So the 6 Christians who were in jail, they refused to renounce their Catholic faith, and all of them were sentenced to death during the public games in the amphitheater in 203 AD. Saints Perpetua and Felicity and their companions, they were hauled into the Colosseum, they were mauled by wild animals, and then they were put to death by the sword. And reportedly, the executioner, he was so shaken by Saint Perpetua's brave and noble demeanor that she herself had to guide his blade to her neck.
Wow.
Because he did not want to kill her. So what are the lessons that we can learn from this? Well, I think the first lesson we can learn is that Catholic Christians, we may be called to endure great sufferings even in our lifetime. And if so, God will sustain us just like he sustained St. Perpetua and Felicity. In fact, in her diary, St. Perpetua wrote this. She said, quote, "What a day of horror, terrible heat, owing to the crowds, rough treatment by the soldiers. To crown all, I was tormented with anxiety for my baby. Such anxieties I suffered for many days, but I obtained leave for my baby to remain in prison with me, and being relieved of my trouble and anxiety for him, I at once recovered my health, and my prison became a palace to me, and I would rather have been there than anywhere else," close quote. Well, this reminds me also of what Jesus Christ tells us, our Lord, in Matthew 10:37. He says, "Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." St. Perpetua and St. Felicity, they showed love and respect for their earthly fathers, but they didn't forget their primary identity. They were Catholic Christians, and they knew that they were called to walk and follow the footsteps of their master. Saint Felicity and Saint Perpetua,
pray for
us.
Oh, wow, powerful story. Powerful story, Jess.
Those are inspirational, because sometimes we feel sorry for ourselves because we got a hangnail, or we stubbed our funny bone or something, and we you woke up and you got a limp, your knee hurts. We as modern day Catholic Christians, we complain about the most insignificant things.
That's correct, Jess. And we need more of these great saints, especially in this time of persecution of our faith. We might not be thrown into the lion's den, but geez, it's open season on Catholic Christians, and so we need to stay strong, and we can learn from stories like this, our brothers and sisters in the faith. And
Ruben, and you know what's sad is that some of the persecutions coming from within the church.
Oh, yeah. So got that right.
We not only have external persecution from the secular humanist forces that we're going to be talking about, but we also have we have a lot of Judases, not a few. We have enough Judases right now in high places that are persecuting people for trying to do the right thing.
I want to mention something. It's from our last show when we were talking about reparation, and I think I wanted to mention this because we don't talk about this too much, and we were talking about justice and making reparation for our sins and the sins of others. So, Chad Ripperger talks about this, and reparation starts with confession. When you commit a sin, it's in the will, and then you gravely disorder your faculties, and then through sinning, through suffering, as we just heard from these great saints, the purification occurs so we can make reparation to God. So we're called to know Him, as our Baltimore Catechism says, to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this lifetime so that we can know, love, and serve Him in the next. We manifest His excellence or His glory. So He made us to manifest His excellence. And so every time we sin, we create a vice, and we disorder our faculties, and we rob Him from all the glory that was due to Him at the time of our creation, at the time in which we did it. So we all have to pay the price for sin. As a result of each time we sin, the amount of grace that could be in the world has been diminished, and as a result, everyone else suffers from each and every sin, mortal and venial. So each time we sin, we hurt Jesus. And Christ said to St. Margaret Mary, when He appeared to her to promote the Sacred Heart devotion, He said, the thing that hurts Him the most is people's indifference or lack of charity. We can go to God and make up for the sins to reduce the offense that God takes in relationship to them. So if we haven't, the point here I'm making is, if we haven't started making acts of reparation in your spiritual life, we need to start now. That's my point.
That's a great point. Mm-hmm. And Ruben, by the way, some people don't even realize that even in the New Catechism, it quotes the Baltimore Catechism on knowing, loving, and serving God. In fact, if you want to know where it's at, it's in paragraph 1721 in the New Catechism. It says this. It quotes the Baltimore. It says this: God put us in this world to know, to love, and to serve Him, and so to come to paradise. That's paragraph 1721. It's a little bit shorter, but it says essentially the same thing. It's called the catechetical tradition. And Ruben, also about what you said about justice, people forget. They think that we just owe justice to, you break the law, you owe a debt to society, or to the person that you've offended. But the Catechism says that the first person you owe justice to is God. In 1807, it says this: justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and then neighbor.
That's right.
So the New Catechism says the order of business is, first of all, as Catholics, we give justice to God. And what is the justice He deserves? Worship and adoration. And if you fall into sin, what is the justice He deserves? Father Ripperger said, reparation.
That's right, Jess. And You go on a sinning spree, like a meth binge that some of these dope heads do. You go on a sinning spree, and then you go to confession. The priest says, "Okay, go for your penance, say 3 Hail Marys." Is that it? You know, that all that sin you committed, and then you think that you're done just by saying the 3 Hail Marys. That's not going to cut it, folks. There's the temporal punishments due to sin. So keep that in mind. You know, we've got to do some additional stuff. You know, maybe sleep on the floor. Maybe take a cold shower. Put a rock in your shoe. There's a lot of things you could do to make up for it. And going to mass, adoration, extra rosaries. You know, so.
Ruben, and you know, you're right about that, because, you know, Venerable Sheen, he says that if there's no Easter without Good Friday.
That's right.
So in other words, anybody who knows, you know, even on a natural level, if you go to the gym, you go to the gym and you know that there's no gain without pain. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that. Any athlete knows that there's no victory without sacrifice. These are just universal laws. And it's same in the spiritual law. In the spiritual law of the universe, without the cross, there's no salvation. And that's why in Lent, we suffer for the sake of glory and for the sake of mortification, mortifying ourselves, and reparation. So what does mortification mean? It means that we practice these rigorous, practices of self-denial, these penitential devotions. Why? To overcome our sin, our concupiscence, and to strengthen our will. To mortify your body means to fortify your body.
Amen. We'll be right back. Don't change that dial.
This is Terry Barber inviting you, all the men, to a men's conference June 15th at the Sacred Heart Chapel. This is going to be a day where we're going to talk about true masculinity. You know, there's a problem in the Catholic Church today. We have very few men who love the Catholic faith. And I know a lot of the wives that I'm listening to right now saying, I want my husband to be on fire for the faith. Send him to the men's conference. Your son, send him to the men's conference by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call 877-526-2151. That's June 15th. When your husband comes back from this conference, or your son, they're going to have a different view about their Catholic faith, because they're going to meet 3 men who love Jesus and his bride, the church, and are going to instill in them a love for Christ and his church, the Eucharist, Our Lady. Bring them to virginmostpowerfulradio.org. Sign up there or call 877-526-2151. Full sheen ahead.
It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
You're listening to Jesus 911, where iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. We got a two-man car. We're 10-8. Our call signs are John 3:16. And we're about to switch gears here and go into an article on cultural Marxism, and it's at the heart of our moral disintegration.
Ruben, as two retired cops, I think we're always curious about what's the source of the problem. Not that there is a problem. We got that. We always want the inquisitive mind of a law enforcement officer is always, where did it come from? What's the motive? How did it start? I think this author, Michael Walsh, just really went deep into the source of the problem that we're facing in America right now, and that's affected the church. Now, there's a friend of the show. I've interviewed her before several times. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse. She recently wrote a book about the sexual revolution. I interviewed her on the book, and she basically says what a lot of people said, that in the 1960s, the sexual revolution was a pivotal point to turn the country. And I agree with that. But even before that, this article written by Michael Walsh, which he takes from his book called The Devil's Pleasure Palace, he says there's something even before the sexual revolution. And I'd heard of this before, and this article just laid it out.
Yeah.
Okay? He said that before the sexual revolution, at the heart of it, you have what's known as cultural Marxism, or what's known as in universities, there's courses called critical theory. Okay?
Right.
And the critical theory, these courses come from the Frankfurt School it comes from Europe, basically. The Frankfurt School, it's a school of socialism that uses this technique called critical theory to tear down tradition. Now, one of the first psychiatrists, William Reich, who's one of the pioneers of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, he's the one that coined the term sexual revolution. He's the first one that said that back in 1936. Now, William Reich, he was, as they would say in police work, he was a 5150. He was a crazy guy. Yeah. What do I mean by that?
Or in Spanish, a maniaco. Right.
Yeah. William Reich was a sex-mad, sexual indulgent, likely even... Look at his picture in Wikipedia. I looked at it last night.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like a nut, an absolute nut. We know that he used to have his patients get nude. He used to massage his nude patients. He'd have sex with them. He was, back in the 1920s, he was already advocating contraceptives, abortion, and divorce. So William Reich, this psychiatrist, he was huge into, Marxism, and he wanted to kind of bring Marxism, the Marxist thought, with his work in psychology. And so in the Frankfurt School, that was basically transported from Europe over here to Columbia University, they have their own center here known as the Frankfurt Studies. To show you how crazy William Reich was, I can't say this on the family show, but he invented a machine to pleasure yourself. I'll just say that, okay? And I don't want to mention what the machine is called, but you can kind of guess. He invented a machine for men to pleasure themselves. Well, this nut, William Reich, who's again, very respected, transporting this critical theory thought into colleges here in the U.S., he died in prison, and he conned a lot of people into buying his machine, okay?
That's the good part of the article right there.
Yeah. And also, the Food and Drug Administration actually burned several tons of his books. Ruben, you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, well, first, let's go back. So just so that all our listeners are on board about who Karl Marx was. 19th century German philosopher. He's the founder and the primary theorist of Marxism. Have you noticed, Jess, that a lot of problems are coming from Germany? Hitler.
Political and theological.
A lot of problems. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, So I noticed that. And so he had an antithetical and a complex attitude to religion, reviewing it primarily as, quote, the soul of soulless conditions or the opium of the people, and that religion had been useful to the ruling classes since it gave the working classes false hope for millennia. And at the same time, Marx saw religion as a form of protest by the working classes against their poor economic conditions and their alienation. So, yeah, he was an atheist, and that's you got to know where he's coming from. So You could see.
And Ruben, people with his mentality, all they care about is this world. They all they care about is building a utopia, a perfect world. They don't care about the soul because they don't believe in the soul. They don't believe in the afterlife. They don't even think about that. It doesn't factor into their thinking. They just worry about the here and now.
Right. That's right. So, so critical theory, you were talking about that. It's central to their plan. These guys are involved in this critical thinking. More than likely, whether you knew it or not, this is what you got in college and probably even in high school. So if it sounds familiar to you, that's why. Critical theory seeks societal transformation through the emancipation of mankind from all forms of slavery. The slavers happen to be the church, the family, and the free market. So when you hear someone bad-mouthing America and history, that's critical theory. The incessant intonations against the Crusades, critical theory again. The patriarchal family, rape culture, multiculturalism, political correctness, speech, all codes of critical theory. The idea is to make you question everything, and in questioning, institutions fall.
That's the key to this article right here, Ruben. And this is what these cultural Marxists are using against President Trump. They're using it against tradition, against conservative values. They're using it against the church. In other words, these are Alinsky methods also.
Yeah.
Alinsky methods, that comes from the Frankfurt School because that's where Alinsky learned it from. You demonize your opponent. You question everything. You continue. I'll tell you, they're using right now, the liberals in our Catholic Church, Ruben, are using critical theory on the issue of homosexuality. They keep saying, James Martin, Father, keeps saying, we've got to change the teachings. They're wrong. People aren't disordered. We're just differently ordered. This is the tactics of the critical theorists where you keep on questioning something over and over and over. You do seminars. You speak at the Los Angeles Religious Education Congress. You pump out books. You go from one Catholic university to another talking about all the virtues of being homosexual. You question it until people say, you know what? Okay, we'll accept it.
Yeah, you're onto something. That's right. And so, you know what? We heard this from our last president. You know, critical theory came from the mouth of President Obama when he sneered about Orthodox Christians. It comes not from his supposed love of Islam, but his training in critical theory. This is what the article says. This is what Michael Walsh says in his book. But his training in critical theory and the cultural Marxism, which he learned from his own father's bitterness, from communist mentor Frank Marshall Davis, and from his professors and from Saul Alinsky. Obama truly is the most radical person ever to occupy the White House, for he wants to tear down the institutions that have made and protected our country.
I'll give you an example how he tore something down. He bragged about it. He said that I will be the president in American history that will go down in American history that brought in homosexual marriage to the United States. That will be my great contribution as one of the presidents of this country. That's classic critical theory, mentality and propaganda that he used as 8 years for presidents to tear down a lot of institutions. What's another thing that he used using critical theory? Questioning tradition, questioning timeless American conservative values. Obamacare.
Yeah.
That's how he rammed Obamacare down our throats. He kept talking about how poor our medical health plan, our programs were, capitalism and the free market. He kept demonizing it until he shoved through critical theory lectures Obamacare down the country's throat.
That's right. Having the big government, having this the government pay for everything. As if the money's just going to come from the sky. Come out of the sky, and it's just it's not working. It hasn't worked. So.
Ruben, yeah. I'm going to tell you, and the article quotes it says, these guys that brought this stuff over to America, they're evil men.
Yeah.
It names them. Max Horkheimer, Theodore Adorno, Antonio Gramsci, Herbert Marcuse, Eric Fromm. And guess who picked it up here? People like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Saul Alinsky. And many bishops in our church. They've bought into critical theory. It's Marxist thought, and it's meant to undermine Western civilization And now, Ruben, they've had this Frankfurt School of Critical Theory in Columbia University in 1935. If you're wondering why you get so many bad crop of thinkers coming from Columbia, now you probably know why.
Yeah, that's right, Jess. We talked about Western civilization and how it's being dismantled. It's not even, nobody wants to teach it in colleges anymore. So you're not getting it. No one's reading from the same book anymore. So a lot of our kids, our students, they're missing out on learning all about Western civilization. So we talked about that a couple of shows ago.
That's right.
Yeah,
and this article, by the way, it comes from Michael Walsh. There's a book that he wrote. It's called The Devil's Pleasure Palace. That's where this article is drawn from his book. He's a faithful Catholic. He's pro-life, pro-marriage. And he says basically that this cultural Marxism is a fight against Satan himself.
Amen.
Yep.
It is. That's what it comes down to.
In case you're thinking that communism and Marxism isn't alive, it's alive and well, Ruben. We got people, Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, you got many people that are just open about it and openly promoting it. Now, they call it progressivism, they call it liberalism, but if you watch the movie from EWTN, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, the narrator says there that the communists would couch the word communism euphemistically under liberalism or progressivism or socialism. That way Americans would accept it.
Makes sense.
But anytime you hear the word progressive or liberal or socialist, that's a code word for communism.
Yeah, Jess, I think that I think the American people are starting to realize this, and that the progressives are getting so far to the left that we've talked about this too. The battle lines have been drawn, so I think it's going to be interesting to see in 2020 just how many Catholics and Christians can hold fast to their beliefs. And
I just heard a study. I read a study last night, Ruben, that says that 1 out of 4 Americans want socialism. So they're still vastly outnumbered. 3 out of 4 Americans like our current system of liberty, freedom, and capitalism. So 1 out of 4 believes in socialism. But Mike
it's
Walsh,
the younger generation, Jess. I have to believe.
Yeah, there's a bit of good news at the end of the article. We'll share it on the next segment. It does end with good news.
All right.
Regarding socialism. So we'll mention it on the next segment.
Any comments or questions? 888-526-2151. Don't change that dial. We'll be right back.
This is Terry Barber inviting you, all the men, to a men's conference June 15th at the Sacred Heart Chapel. This is going to be a day where we're going to talk about true masculinity. There's a problem in the Catholic Church today. We have very few men who love the Catholic faith. And I know a lot of the wives that I'm listening to right now saying, I want my husband to be on fire for the faith. Send him to the men's conference. Your son, send him to the men's conference by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call 877-526-2151. That's June 15th. When your husband comes back from this conference, or your son, they're going to have a different view about their Catholic faith, because they're going to meet 3 men who love Jesus and his bride, the church, and are going to instill in them a love for Christ and his church, the Eucharist, Our Lady. Bring them to virginmostpowerfulradio.org. Sign up there or call 877-526-2151. Full sheen ahead.
It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
Jesus 911. For those of you who are not bilingual or bilingually challenged, that's Jesus 911. And we are a two-man car. Call signs are John 3:16. And we're giving you we're talking about a cultural Marxism, and it's at the heart of our moral disintegration. I want to give you one more 911 call from the desk. 911 dispatcher says, 911 caller. Yeah, I'm having trouble breathing. I'm all out of breath. Darn, I think I'm going to pass out. Dispatcher, sir, where are you calling from? I'm on a payphone, North and Foster. Damn. Dispatcher says, sir, an ambulance is on the way. Are you asthmatic? Caller, no. What were you doing before you started having trouble breathing? Caller, running from the police. These crooks are not the smartest. True story. True story.
Going back to the article by Michael Walsh, here's the good news, the way he ends it. He says this. He's not pessimistic, and neither are we, because we know that we're on the winning team. We know that that before the second coming of Christ, St. Louis, the Montfort promise that there's going to be the age of Mary, the era of the Blessed Mother. And Michael Walsh says this. He goes, I believe that cultural Marxism is spent, but just like the fingernails on a cadaver may still grow, and that these people and their evil theory will continue to do damage and harm souls. And it's up to us first to recognize what is truly at the heart of the matter and then to stop it. So he believes that it's not going to advance. And again, the study that I read yesterday, only 1 out of 4 Americans believes that we should become a socialist country. And one of the good things that I did see is that President Trump, in the CPAC speech that he gave, and in he gave 2 speeches in the last week. In both the speeches, he said very clearly what I've never heard any president ever say. He says America will not become a socialist nation. He blasted it both times.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a standing ovation. I mean, people, he brought down the roof with both those statements. So I agree with the Michael Walsh here. I think that cultural Marxism is spent. I don't think this evil theory is going to gain ground because we're now identifying the problem. And here's the last thing that I'll say to connect this before we move on to another topic of interest to us here at Muscular Christianity. As I was watching that documentary on EWTN, I watched it again over the weekend and took some notes. A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, where it talks about the infiltration of communism and socialism into the Catholic Church through a lot of the bishops. Cardinal Bernardin was one of them that featured prominently in the video. Many other bishops featured prominently that they were in bed with the socialist communists back in the 60s. But in this documentary, it said something that I've read before, I've heard it before, and it makes sense to me. It says that the soft sciences, such as, and I've always kind of known this, the soft sciences such as psychology, psychiatry, sociology, they were born as in fact, Father Mitch Pacwa says this, they were born as a result of the French Revolution. The French Revolution promoted an anti-supernatural bias, which says that now everything has a natural solution and a rational answer.
That's correct.
So, in other words, here's and that's what I tell kids when they say, hey, Mr. Romero, I'm going to college, what should I study? I say, well, let me warn you. If you study the hard sciences, they can't tinker with the hard sciences professors because 1 + 1 will always be 2 in every country and in every language. If you take engineering, criminal justice, there's some things that are hard science biology, nursing, that they can't tinker with. However, if you get into the soft sciences, just know that the professors, especially that attracts a lot of the liberal professors, they can give you their own opinions on sociology, psychology, psychiatry, and they know that a lot of young minds are malleable. They're impressionable, and so we lose a lot of our kids that take the soft sciences is right out of high school. Now, if you spend a couple of years and you get some world experience and then go back to school like I did in my 30s, I was slapping these professors around because
Me too.
I had experience. I had real world. I was paying bills, paying rent, married.
Exactly.
I had a blue collar job. So when I went back to college in my early 30s to get my BA, before I got my MA in my late 30s, I was a pebble in the shoe to these professors. They couldn't stand me because I was not an 18-year-old kid right out of high school that had no world experience. I was already fairly well read in the Catholic faith. I was already deep into my faith. So even though I took some of these soft sciences, you have to take it for general education, I was able to see right through their arguments. Ruben, what do you say?
Same thing. Just when I went to UCLA as a freshman, I was pre-med. I was taking, these calculus classes and anyway, but then I left. I came back later. I ended up getting my a 2-year degree in my in administration of justice, and then went back to UCLA. And so all that math was and biology was forgotten by then. So I was already on the job just like you. I went back, and I was in my 30s. And so I ended up taking a soft science, but I was no softie, Jess. I was no.
No. Yeah, no.
And you know what?
You're a hard dude.
I was like you. I was questioning everything because these kids were like soaking it up as if like they were sponges, and it was the professor was speaking from the gospel, and I was it's not like that. I had political science professor and sociology professors saying, well, "What do you do, young man? What is it that you They were questioning me. How could this guy? He's making these arguments, of things from my experience in the real world, and yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Jess. I had my emphasis was on deviant behavior, so it helped out in court. It helped out when I would testify as an expert in gangs, and so I wasn't too displeased, but that's right.
But in other words, you can see when it was not factual what they were saying, and it was their opinion.
Oh,
right?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, same here. In fact, one class, the professor was so irate with me towards the end of the semester. It was a female professor. I won't mention her name. She was a hardcore lefty socialist Marxist. She says, if you ask one more question and question me one more time, I'm going to call the police on you.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, I was a deputy.
Yeah.
So I said, ma'am, the police is right here. I said, I'm right in front of you. And she didn't like that. She didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was.
Of course not.
Yeah. Well, hey, Ruben, let's move on to a topic. It's a common slogan amongst men: boys will be boys, and I think there's some good information here that we want to impart with the audience. The old saying, "Boys will be boys," it seems to carry a lot of baggage with it, but it also carries a lot of truth with it.
That's right.
Okay? And what's the truth to that statement? Okay, laying aside the baggage label assigned by the left. Think for a moment about the underlying thought here because it approaches the status of natural law. Okay? Boys will be boys boils down to the natural law principle that St. Thomas Aquinas would say, a thing is what it is. Okay? A thing is what it is. So what does that mean? It means that a boy is not a girl. It means that a girl's not a boy. So, but what is a boy? For our purposes, let's confine ourselves to some traits that are inherent to masculinity, things that totally trigger the left and send them into fits of violent rage. One trait of authentic masculinity is the desire to belong to a cause greater than ourselves. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's why, in this current culture, this has been attacked and marginalized, but you can't get rid of this because it's natural law and it's just there. That's why, for example, on a deviant level, that's why gangs exist. Because bad guys want to be around other bad guys doing bad things. But this is why good guys, boys go and fight wars. They go fight for their schools on the football field, on the basketball field, on the wrestling mat. They join fire departments, police departments, paramedics, football teams. This boyness engenders a competitive spirit. This boyness makes men want to conquer something. I've got to win. And it also establishes esprit de corps, this camaraderie. You want to be something greater than yourself. And Ruben, all of this is systematically, talking about the cultural Marxist, they're systematically trying to tear this down and make this some type of a society, some type of genderless society.
That's right. And as long as there's healthy outlets for young men, such, that society hums along very nicely. And Jess, I want to just tell you that, I felt this camaraderie. I'm just going to give you my experience. This esprit de corps when I attended an East LA station, a sheriff's station reunion of sorts. It was pretty well attended. I mentioned it to you with guys that you and I both worked with.
Yeah, you sent me pictures.
As deputies. And then there was a later generation who worked the station when I came back as a sergeant. And so for those 5 or 6 hours, Jess, we spent greeting one another, reminiscing about old war stories, and it was as if time had stood still, and and we had been transported back to the days when we were those ghetto gunslingers. It's what boys do, and we became men. We were boys, but we became men in the process. When we joined the department, we joined for that noble cause, Jess. You can probably agree with that, to make the world and the communities that we served a better place to live, to fight crime, injustices, and protect the weak and the vulnerable, and put predators and criminals in prison where they couldn't prey on the victims anymore. And it was a sacrifice, and yes, a call of duty. And so I can totally relate to the article when it talks about boys will be boys, because I felt that camaraderie. I felt that esprit de corps, and it lives in me very strong. So going on with the article, it says, for nearly 2,000 years, the Catholic Church, it provided a natural outlet for this natural law reality for young men. There were spiritual mentors who demanded excellence and sacrifice from young men, and it was all properly ordered for the greatest causes of all, eternal salvation.
Amen. So
when we get back, we're going to pick up where we left off here. If you have any comments or questions, 888-526-2151. Remember, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
This is Terry Barber inviting you, all the men, to a men's conference June 15th at the Sacred Heart Chapel. This is going to be a day where we're going to talk about true masculinity. There's a problem in the Catholic Church today. We have very few men who love the Catholic faith. And I know a lot of the wives that I'm listening to right now saying, I want my husband to be on fire for the faith. Send him to the men's conference. Your son, send him to the men's conference by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org or call 877-526-2151. That's June 15th. When your husband comes back from this conference, or your son, they're going to have a different view about their Catholic faith, because they're going to meet 3 men who love Jesus and his bride, the church, and are going to instill in them a love for Christ and his church, the Eucharist, Our Lady. Bring them to virginmostpowerfulradio.org. Sign up there or call 877-526-2151. Full sheen ahead.
It is only because of your continued prayers and generous donations that Virgin Most Powerful Radio can broadcast live each weekday. We count on your spiritual and financial support because you understand the urgent need for Catholic programming that shares the gospel with clarity and charity, but without compromise. Please prayerfully consider becoming a monthly donor. You can set it up with the touch of a button on our website, catholicrc.org.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
Jesus 911. We're back with Two Man Car, and we are 10-8. We're available for calls, so if you have any comments or questions, give us a call. Jesse?
Hey, Ruben, I like something. You'll like this. In the Dewey Reams Bible, Psalm 911. Check this out. Dewey Reams.
Tell them why it's different in the Dewey Reams than just the numbering's different.
Yeah, the Dewey Reams was, I think, written like in 1582. That translation that we have, it's way before. It's before the King James Bible. It was the Bible that was used.
Yeah, it was translated from the Latin
Vatican
Vulgate.
II.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes from the Latin Vulgate, translated into English, 1582, and it was the Bible that was used for like 1,900.
That's the one I use, but
yeah, and I like the footnotes. The language is hard for me to read, but I definitely get a lot of my Bible study footnotes from the Dewey Reams. Here's what it says in Psalm 911. Okay, Dewey Reams, it says this quote: "And let them trust in thee, who know thy name. For thou hast not forsaken them that seek thee, O Lord." Powerful verse. Yeah. So Psalm 911 of the Dewey Reams, it tells us that if you trust in the Lord and you seek him, that he will not forsake you. That's Psalm 911 in the Dewey Reams. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you, Jesus.
Hey, Ruben, we're talking about these the cultural. Well, the boys will be boys, but it's kind of segues into, again, the cultural Marxists that have been trying to effeminize our boys, the liberals, the seculars, the Masons, the humanists. And as you were talking about the Catholic Church, I'll tell you a time in history that makes me very proud. A lot of Catholics are ashamed of that, and I'm proud of it. In fact, in one of my books called Lord, Prepare My Hands for Battle, I have a crusader right in the front cover. These guys were men's men. This was a volunteer army that saw the church being attacked by militant Islam, and these men said, "Not on my watch," and they strapped it on, and they went out there and fought 8 wars, and we lost some, we won some. But the fact is, I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for those brave men that had a lot of testosterone, these guys weren't out there pushing Father James Martin's books or talking like he does with a limp wrist. These brave men, you know what they did? They left their life in the battlefield. Why? For Holy Mother Church. Tens of thousands of these Catholic men died in volunteer armies. And if that wouldn't have happened, Ruben, you know what? We wouldn't be having right now, Jesus 911, or I wouldn't be having the Terry and Jesse show. I'd be having the Ali and Pasha show, I'd be having
reading from the Quran. You're right.
And we'd be reading from the Quran if it wasn't for these brave men. But let's that's my 2 cents. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah. So, the real reason the church has fallen into such disrepair is because too many leaders, they've ignored the natural law in multiple realms. The truth is obscured. The courage to announce the truth has evaporated. And in the place of the truth, we see cowards compromising at every turn. So it's not so much that there are people who don't believe they lost that supernatural faith, but then the ones that do believe, they're shying away. They're being wimps because they're not speaking up. And so the church has become infested with emasculated men with no strong youth, who no strong youth would even dream of following. Men will sacrifice for a cause, yes, but they will only follow another man in that endeavor. So no self-respecting man would pay one's dime's worth of attention to a wimp. Why are there such a shortage of vocations to the priesthood and religious life? Look who's in charge. What strong Dedicated young men's going to want to follow a wimpy, effeminate, acting, emasculated male. The level of respect is zilch. And the only males attracted to that are other wimpy, effeminate, acting, emasculated men, because birds of a feather flock together. Jesse, everybody defines leadership, differently, but I agree totally with this. But what John Maxwell defines leadership is it's that leader who's one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And a great leader is going to be one who's going to get people to do what they're not willing to do on their own. Someone who's going to lead them. And I'm going to, in that June 15th, when we have the men's conference, I'm going to be doing a talk on leadership. And there's just a couple key points that, like, a leader needs to have honesty, integrity. That's the supreme quality of leadership. It's unquestionable integrity. And we haven't seen that coming from the Vatican. People they're not being honest with us. Archbishop Vigano has said over and over again that, Pope Francis knew about the McCarrick. And so we're not getting the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Confidence. A leader has to show confidence. It shows some swagger and assertiveness to gain the respect of his subordinates. You've got that in, like the Cardinal Burks, Carter Mueller.
Bishop
right.
Schneider.
Right, yeah. That's right. Athanasius Schneider. These people have to inspire others, inspire your followers by setting a good example. I would never expect my guys to do what I was not willing to do. And these guys, some of these good bishops and cardinals are getting down and dirty. They're showing us what it means to be a real leader, right?
Yeah.
And they have to kind of commitment and passion. If you want them to give their all, you have to be passionate. And we've seen that with our Fulton Sheen. We saw this with Father Casey, right? We saw that with some of these.
Father Wade Meneza.
And oh boy,
Father Karapi.
That's exactly who I was thinking of. And we're getting on the same
passion,
right? Exactly. That's passion, and someone has to be a good communicator. Words, because words have the power to motivate people, Jess, and make them do the unthinkable, and having good decision-making capabilities, the ability to take the right decision, make the right decision at the right time. And there's other things, but these are some of the qualities of a good leader, and we need to get back to it.
It seems like you're describing the saints and fathers and doctors of the church. Everything you're saying reminds me of these holy men in Catholic history.
That's right. You have to be accountable. A good leader takes a little more than his share of the blame and a little less than his share of the credit. And when I would go to work, Jess, I had on my blotter every morning. I would read this prayer. I was a sergeant working narcotics, and I had this prayer that I prayed every day, and it kept me humble. And it went like this: Lord, when I am wrong, make me willing to change. When I am right, make me easy to live with. So strengthen me that the power of my example will far exceed the authority of my rank. So
Tough.
I tried to live by that motto. And hopefully the guys they picked up on that. Jess?
Yeah, Ruben, you remind me of the saints in Catholic tradition. Some of the great Saint Bernard, Saint Boniface, the Saint Gregory's.
Yeah.
These were men who were definitely not emasculated.
Negative, right?
Yeah, and but about Catholics today, the problem is if they don't see strength in leadership, if they see effeminate men, it doesn't inspire them to greatness to serve Jesus Christ. And I just read an article that it got me sad, especially as a Hispanic Catholic. I read an article that large numbers of young Hispanic men in the Los Angeles area, Southern California, are joining up the ranks of Islam.
I had never heard that.
I think it was put out by the Daily News or something, and I was very sad when I read that. Why? Well, let's admit, I know Islam's a false religion with a false prophet. I get that, but you can't deny that there's a semblance of masculinity there. Okay, and it's, I would call it a perverted masculinity without a doubt. I mean, suicide bombers, homicide bombers, rapists. but they definitely have this masculine trajectory, even though it's perverted.
Yeah, toxic masculinity, huh? Right.
Yeah, but that's why you got people that have malformed consciences are saying, yeah, hey, that's the religion for me. And, for all the faults that Islam has, which are too many, I mean, we could do a 10-hour show on it, you have to admit this, or we have to admit this, that it has the ability to inspire young men to die for their cause. And in Europe, there's also this revival of neo-paganism. You're having these young Catholic males who are the main proponents. Over in Iceland, they just built a statue to a Nordic god. It opened last year. A Nordic god. And that's the second one that's near the construction phase this year. You also have, a lot of European men. They're going back to pagan religions. Religions of the Nords, the Vikings, the Visigoths, the Vandals. They're going back to these Celtic religions that St. Patrick, a very masculine bishop, he got rid of them from that Emerald Isle called Ireland. And, he got rid of the snakes, and now these snakes are coming back, and these young Catholic men are worshiping Nordic and Celtic gods. They're coming back in fashion. And these gods are nothing less than demons.
That's right. So what's the answer, Jess? We got to get back.
The answer is we got to go back to basics.
That's right.
Okay? As Catholics, don't make it complicated. We got to go back to basics. We got to go back to a life of prayer. We got to go back to a life of faith. We got to go back to a life of the sacraments. We got to go and start reading our Bible again. We got to start doing the daily rosary. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you right now, and if you had your feelings hurt, I'm sorry. If you're not praying the daily rosary, don't listen to this show. Everybody that's listening to this show, we want you to be praying the daily rosary.
That's right.
This is what's going to turn this battle around. We have to call upon Virgin Most Powerful, the Blessed Virgin Mary, to crush the head of the serpent. Everybody here listening to this program, I'm asking you, to be part of the listenership of this program, you must be praying the daily rosary.
Yes.
Period.
The Catholic faith preached in all its fullness, just with the traditional Latin Mass, with maybe the divine liturgy of the East, such as the Byzantine Rite. It's glorious. It's attractive. It's what will draw real masculinity back to the church. And so all one needs to do is see what the effects of Vatican II has done to the mass attendance and the numbers. The priests we've dropped the priesthood from in 1965, 58,000 priests. Now we have 31,000. We got to get that back up. People attending mass, it's only 1 in 4. Now it used to be 3 out of 4. So we got to, like Jesse says, pray your rosary. Be a man of prayer. Be a woman of prayer, and lead your families to the cross. Don't shy away from the cross. We got to carry on. Forge on, my brothers. Right. Forge on.
I would also just say one last thing. I wish we would actually implement what some of the documents of Vatican II said. They haven't been implemented since 1965. That's another show for another day. We'll be back.
Be back. Stay tuned for Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Mashuda from the Spiritual Dojo. You've been listening to Jesus 911. Thank you for listening, and we will see you tomorrow.
Saint Faustina's Prayer for Priests. O my Jesus, I beg thee on behalf of the whole Church, grant it love and the light of thy Spirit, and give power to the words of priests, so that hardened hearts might be brought to repentance and return to thee, O Lord. Lord, give us holy priests. Thou thyself maintain them in holiness. O divine and great high priest, may the power of thy mercy accompany them everywhere, and protect them from the devil's traps and snares, which are continually being set for the souls of priests. May the power of thy mercy, O Lord, shatter and bring to naught all that might tarnish the sanctity of priests. For thou canst do all things. Amen. Virgin most powerful, pray for us.